listening to The Starting Zone. This is The Starting Zone's live call-in show where we hear questions from you, our patrons. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And as the sweet, sultry voice of Coltrane said there at the top, it is the live patron call-in show. We do this episode where patrons can either call in or submit their questions. And we do have a good amount of submitted questions, which is great. Today is August 28th, 2021. My name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing. Joined as always by my co-host Jason Lucas. Jason, before we get started in any of this has been a very eventful week. A lot has happened, but there's two things that we really want to acknowledge. The first of which is the passing of a friend of the show and a friend of mine and a friend of yours, Josh, aka Epic Insanity. He passed suddenly on Thursday night, and so a lot of us woke up to the news on Friday morning, and that took me by surprise entirely. I have known Epic for many years now, and as someone who's also involved in podcasting and show production, and his actual full-time job for quite a while was to help other people produce podcasts by doing editing post and helping them post their projects. So we had a lot to talk about, a lot of shop to talk, and we also had a lot of fun with the fact that we pretty much looked identical. He was my doppelganger. There's if you go to my Twitter account, there's a good set of photos of me and him, where we would have a lot of fun at BlizzCons and conventions with people having mistaken identity, thinking I'm him or he's me, and a lot of back and forth fun happening with that. But he was a really kind soul. He was someone who always tried to raise up the people around him, and he was someone who was always happy to either give you a hug, let you stroke his beard, or have a really good conversation, or help you out in some way. So he made everyone else smile, and I know the world's a bit of a darker place without him in it for us. So I
absolutely
really wanted to take a moment to just acknowledge Josh and the contributions he's made, not just to the podcasting community, but to a lot of people's lives when it came to the generosity he had.
Yeah, Epic was such a big-hearted guy. You know, he always made you feel like you were important if you ran into him at an event or something. You know, he just lit up a room. It was that kind of thing. And you know, we had the privilege to work with him a couple times on TSE. He guested on a couple episodes with us over the years, and I want to say it was BlizzCon 2017. He moderated a WoW panel at World of Podcasts that I was on. So we worked together on that. And the TSE episode we did was kind of promoting that as well. So that was a great chat. It was really fun to collaborate with him on that project. And, you know, the dude just had a lot of passion for the game. He really took audio production and show production seriously. And he was a pro when it came to that stuff. And, I don't know, man. It's just unthinkable. There are no words, you know. He's 37 years old. It's just obviously way too young. And I mean, a lot of people really cared about him. You could tell the dude really loved his family. He was close with his family. And I don't know. You know, there's no way I could frame this that really makes me feel better about it. And I'm not trying to make anybody feel better about it, because I feel terrible about it. You know, he was one of the good ones in our space. You know, Frozen Nerds kind of fell off over the years, but it was a fun show while it was going. And you know, I think people like Epic are who we want to, they're the kind of people that we want in our communities and our spaces and stuff. And I mean, if you're involved in like WoW Twitter at all, you probably saw an outpouring yesterday. I mean, this was like just shocking news to wake up to for me yesterday. I didn't see it on Thursday night when it started coming out late night East Coast time. And I mean, Epic and I weren't like best friends for life, but you know, we always enjoyed each other's company. And I think there's a lot of mutual respect there. And you know, I appreciate everything the dude contributed to our scene and our space. And he'll be missed, man. He really was one of the good ones, and it's just a tragedy. There's really not much else to say about it.
Yeah, I want to mention, because this will be in the show notes as well, that his partner slash I would say best friend Kilroy, if you ever are looking from him, he posted an in memoriam thread on the World of Warcraft forums. I'm going to include it in the show notes so people can find it if you're looking for it. But it's basically, he just wanted a thread where people who sort of had experiences with Epic that they wanted to share, to have a place where they could go and share them and sort of create, or at least scroll through and read about the wonderful things and contributions he had and their experiences with them, and some laughs and some funness. Sort of, I would almost say like a WoW wake is kind of what it's about. So I'll include that in the show notes. So if you're looking for that, you can find it there over at thestartingzone.com for this episode, which will be 473. So you can pop in and click on that link, or you can go to Kilroy's Twitter and you can grab it off of there is the other option. So I
definitely think Epic would want people like us, people who knew him and intersected with him through WoW and through podcasting to remember the energy that he brought, right? Remember the BlizzCons and that kind of thing. I mean, he was like, he took that stuff so seriously, even though it was fun, right? He just wanted everybody to have a good time, but be safe, do it in a safe way, and be fun, just enjoy the moment, enjoy the event. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's probably, like, as far as our community goes, the best way we can remember him.
Yeah. Well, the other heavy thing that happened this past week that we wanted to mention here at the top of this episode before we move into the patron questions was that Azeroth Roundtable recorded their final episode, their 3-hour long wrap up bonanza that they chose to do, where they covered a variety of topics. They'd sort of just put together a list of all of the things they wanted to talk about on the show, and all of the sort of, I guess, hot points that might have come up, or memories that they wanted to share or revisit. And I'm assuming they took some submissions from some people as well. And yeah, it was I caught about I think about 20 minutes or 30 minutes of it, because I was busy at the time. I was working at the time, so I wasn't able to actually watch the whole thing. But the part that I caught was John talking about how he doesn't just because he argues with people doesn't mean they're not friends, and sort of the dynamic that he can have with some individuals where they can debate furiously, but they hug and they like each other and they're good to each other and they care about each other. And I thought that was really hilarious, because I said I can confirm in chat, and that was the exact moment where he was talking about it, and I know I made him crack up, and that was the moment I chose to join, because that's the relationship
we've always had.
There's a little moment of
providence there. Yeah. I was gonna say, if you want proof of that, just if you search any kind of interaction John and I have had over the last 5 years, you might find proof of that.
Yeah, we've always gotten along really well with both Ben and John. Ben's just a big sweetheart. We like him a lot. I always like getting hugs from him when I get to see him at BlizzCon and whatnot. And they represented a really important part of the WoW community. They represented players who are there specifically to play with other players, regardless of the difficulty, regardless of what's happening in the scene. They're there for their friends, and it's important that that's represented. So I feel like them moving away from the game and them needing to take a break from the podcasting scene is something that's healthy for them. It's the decision that they're going with, so I support them fully in that. But I'll miss them. That's really what it comes down to. Is I'm gonna miss having those conversations and talking with them and gaming with them and seeing them around as much in the scene. So I know John has fresh young ones that he's taking care of. So I don't blame him, as I'm sure Jason wouldn't either, for putting real life first and putting a priority there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's the most important thing when it comes to any kind of hobby. You want to inject energy and passion into it, but you also have to prioritize. And Azeroth Roundtable, it feels like part of the family around here at TSZ. I mean, unfortunately, we never had a chance to have John on the show, and we only had Ben on once. But I mean, the schedules just don't work, because we're both out east, they're both in Arizona, and the time doesn't really line up for them to make it onto our air. But they invited us on, either individually or in pairs, onto art so many times over the last 4 or 5 years. And every time was just a blast. It was just a privilege to be able to work with those guys and to contribute to that show, and just moonlight with their community and say hi, have fun in chat, and just talk about whatever was on their minds that night. There were no notes for Azeroth Roundtable. There was no prep. You just got in the call, and then the mics went on, and then you had to react to whatever Ben was asking you or whatever John was talking about. There was, it was very spur of the moment. It made it so much fun because, a lot of shows just seem like to never even, not even like they went off track. Like there was no track,
yes,
right? It was just a really kind of free form discussion. Like you'd have, sitting around with your buddies at a bar or something. And it was just always really fun. I respect what they did with that show a lot. They were, before we were doing the show full time, and before I had even really hooked up with Mick and started, contributing to this show, like I was listening to their show, and I have a lot of respect for what they did. I also have a lot of respect for them saying it's time to go, because they could have kept, doing something that they didn't have the passion for just because it benefited them in some way. I think it seemed like it was time. They had obviously kind of stepped way back as it was anyway, and we're kind of doing check-ins to see if like they still felt like doing it, but they weren't really saying anything definitive. And when, once a project has run its course, it's time to just, put it to bed, I think. So nothing but love and respect and admiration for them for what they did with the show. And I'm glad that they did like a final episode the way they wanted to do it on their terms. And, if they ever decided to come back and ride again with like a WoW oriented show, I wouldn't be upset. I wouldn't be like, oh, you did a final episode, you're not allowed to come back. No, I mean, that door could swing open again someday. Who knows? But good for them, man. I mean, we'll miss them. We'll miss doing ARTSZs for sure. So yeah, I mean, we knew that was happening, right? We're coming into the week, like we know it's the last Azeroth Roundtable. Then we get the terrible news about Epic in the morning, and it was just like, this completely sucks. But then we got a developer update from the WoW team at like midday Eastern time that just, it ruined the entire rest of my day. Like my workday was over, right? Like anything else I thought I was doing for the day became, I'm on Twitter and Discord now. We got a huge update from the WoW team, and it's like, I'm excited about the game, but I'm also completely bummed about the space that I inhabit within it. So I'm having a lot of conflicting emotions since yesterday morning. So I don't know. I mean, I guess like on the bright side, exciting stuff coming to the game is a good distraction from, sadness and grief in a way. It's obviously you can't replace like a person, or you can't like, an ongoing creative project. You can't just restore that to a previous point in time. So I mean, it's the experience of being a human, right? You contain multitudes, and you experience multiple emotions and phases of your life all at the same time.
Yeah, I was telling Jason before the show started, this week's been a heck of a week for me, because I left my raid team on Monday, and then I got some bad news about work on Wednesday. And then we got the bad news about Epic on Friday morning, and and then Azeroth Roundtable wrapped up Friday night, and then we got the PTR news, and it was just like I feel I'm just in shock. Like I know I'm still processing all that's happened this week, but this has been a heck of a roller coaster of a week, and a lot going on this week. So it's interesting to come into a Saturday night Patron call-in show. I'm looking forward to a little bit of a distraction. I think that'll be good.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I didn't think when we scheduled this episode earlier this week, I didn't think any of this stuff would really be on our minds as heavily. I didn't expect, like, obviously, like when tragedy strikes, like you don't expect that, right? But you can listen to last week's show. I did not expect a big update about 915 this week. And I don't know, the whole everything swirling yesterday just leaves me, in a pretty weird emotional space right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, so we'll just recap quickly what's happening with 9.1.5, because people, I'm sure, are asking the question, and we're obviously going to go over this on Tuesday's episode, on a regular episode, in depth. But I just want to list these things out because it's kind of important. In modern World of Warcraft, and we know it's coming in, well, this is the fall 2021 developer update, so we know it's coming sometime post-fall, because we're going to be getting PTR sometime in the next few weeks, and then obviously it would be earliest end of December / early January that we'd see 9.1.5. I'm expecting it'll be later than that. However, we have Legion time walking with Mythic Plus, so that means that not only are you going to have Legion time walking and probably a time walking raid, but we're also going to be able to time walk Mythic Plus, which means break out your Legion legendaries because you're going to be equipping those. Maybe even if you had your tier sets or something still kicking around, that might be fun to put on again.
I didn't even think about that.
Oh yeah. So I also don't know if there's like a legendary restriction that's going to happen of, can you wear your modern ones with your Legion ones? Because that would be crazy, right?
Wow.
So we'll see what this looks like. There could be some pretty intense Mythic Plus happening with Legion time walking. We have the improved Covenant swapping that's going to be happening, meaning that they are removing any negative effect of swapping from one Covenant to another. That is just being removed entirely, which means that you can swap at will from one Covenant to another Covenant. And once you hit a certain level of renown, that's when this unlocks. But it doesn't just unlock for you, it's an account-wide unlock, which is kind of that neat thing. They're continuing with that with renown, which means your alt would be able to do something similar once you've done it on your main, which is great. And you're able to swap around. So this is kind of what I've been waiting for, because I'm looking at bouncing around to other Covenants now that I'm kind of done collecting all of the cosmetics for the Night Fae. I want to be able to bounce over to Venthyr and bounce over to Kyrian and finish off not only those campaigns, because I really want to see what those storylines are, but collecting all of the things, which is pretty exciting. And speaking of collecting the things, even when you swap Covenants, you'll still be able to use the cosmetics from the previous Covenant, which I think is also really cool. So it's no longer, those cosmetics and transmogs won't be locked to that Covenant anymore, which I think is also a great change coming through.
This is the proverbial ripcord that we were, talking about so much last summer into last fall. It is being pulled as of 9.1.5. Again, we will talk about this more in depth on Tuesday, but before you get too excited, just remember a couple points. Remember here, this is not like being hot fixed into the game with resets. This is coming in a patch.
Yep.
And you have to be max renown before you can start doing this. So keep that in mind. Blinders on to renown 80 is what I'm recommending to you for the duration of this patch.
The other thing coming in is conduit energy is being removed. So the whole system around about conduit energy is going away. I mean, all of those classes that like to swap around and change out conduit stuff, you'll be able to do that freely. It won't, there's not going to be a limitation on it. So it's just gone. The system is being removed as far as energy goes.
Good riddance.
Yeah. This was an alpha note in this game.
This was, to me, this was like the biggest problem with these, systems. I think you could make sort of a gameplay and story case for sticking with a conduit, at least up to a certain point in the story's development. Conduit energy it either doesn't matter to you or it ruins your experience. So why does it even exist?
Right.
This is a slam dunk. This never should have been added to the game in beta, and it's time to go.
Yep. The legendary items are going to have a recycling system, and I would sort of hint towards BFA, where we had the big machine you could dump everything into and crush it down and you get some resources back. There's the same kind of concept as what they're sort of moving towards, is some sort of system in the game where you can take your legendary and get base mats back from it so that you can focus on moving towards other legendaries if that's one you're not going to use anymore.
Right, you would hope you get some kind of ash cinders rebate, something like that. Maybe not 1-to-1, but just get some chunk back. Yeah. Anything would be better than what we have.
Exactly. New allied race customizations. We talked about this on this week's episode, so be aware of that and alert and looking for that. Alt Covenant campaign skip. So this is, hey, guess what? Once you have progressed far enough on your main through the Covenant campaign and through Renown, you will then be able to have a skip for your alt. And it's not just a skip, it's a skip that gives you rewards. Basically, when you skip, you will get the things that you missed by skipping. So it just boosts your character, basically, is what this ends up being. By choosing to skip over the Covenant campaign, they are just going to give you the stuff that you missed, as opposed to you skipping it and getting nothing, and then having to earn a whole bunch of renown and everything else, which would suck. So this is a better improvement as far as that goes for alt friendliness. So we're glad to see that. They're going to be doing some legacy raid tuning for those of you who want to go back and actually grab some transmogs and things like that. Expect that to get a little bit easier and a little bit more balanced. So they're having a look at it.
That's a sneaky big upgrade to the game, because it just opens up so much more content for collecting. It's rare to me, as somebody who raids every week, even when there's no reason to keep raiding the same content for the duration of a season. It's rare that I end up having all the cosmetics and stuff that I want out of a raid when it's come and gone, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, at the moment, it's a little bit. There's a little bit too much friction there with legacy raids, and BFA raids are not yet on legacy loot rules. So yeah, that stuff is going to be changed sooner than later.
Yeah. As far as new toys and mounts and travel forms, we talked about those as well. There's lots more coming in 9.1.5. They're, of course, doing more tuning and balancing to talents and abilities, so expect to see that. They're going to be reporting on a lot of improvements. Now, that's an interesting one to me, because it basically just means they're going to be sharing more information with us, which is what we want.
No.
Oh, no, this reporting is right. It's feedback on reporting players. That's right. I remember this.
They're going to, I mean, hopefully, because the reporting system is not great. I think anybody who has, experienced an issue in the game, you've probably found the reporting system kind of lacking. It's hard to really report things very specifically. And I know personally, I've seen, character names or guild names that do not belong in this game that I have right-click reported repeatedly and never seen any action on. And it's like, is somebody reviewing these and deciding it's okay? Is nobody reviewing this? What is happening with my reports? Can I get more granularity in submitting my reports to like what the problem actually is? I think all these things would help. And I mean, this is, WoW has a reputation for being a toxic place to play. I don't find that to be the case in my personal experience, but I also take great pains to curate my experience and remove toxicity. Not everybody has the luxury or the emotional energy or bandwidth to do that. So, I mean, this is a relatively small thing in the list, right? This isn't going to change the way that you mechanically play your character or accomplish things in the game, but this is overdue, and it should have big ripple effects in terms of improving, the state of the community, I would hope.
Yeah. Yeah, and every time I open up the Dungeon Finder to actually go and do an M+, I report all of the sale stuff that's happening in there, and I see zero feedback on it. I just report it and it goes away, which is fine with me as far as a result for what I'm doing. But I wouldn't mind getting in-game mails being like, we've received your report, this was the action taken. We've seen your report, this was the action. Like, that would be fine. Just send me a bunch of in-game mails. I don't care. That's cool. Fine. Do that. Like, or give me a pop-up when I log in being like, we received your last report and action has been taken. Great. That's what works in a lot of their other properties, is you get a pop-up and it just tells you. And you're like, cool, thank you. That's what I needed.
Or like,
I know
we're not taking action and here's why. I mean, and other services where you interact with other users, social media and stuff, they have similar things. I mean, obviously nothing is perfect, and these things are largely like automated until it flags some kind of human review. So they're not like 100%, but man, like WoW has just not kept up with the times in terms of this stuff. So I'm glad to see them focusing on that.
And then there's a couple of things that are not 100% confirmed yet, but I just wanted to mention because they're also kind of cool. There was a conversation happening on Twitter, and Ian was involved in it, and this wasn't an official announcement, and he's made it very clear this is an official announcement, but he did mention that they're currently taking a look at the ability to transfer anima from your main character to alts, finding a way to do that, and removing the cap on the total amount of anima that you can have on a character so that people could just bank up as much as they wanted and transfer as much as they wanted. They are looking at that. That's not like it's official and coming. This is something they're considering doing. So
hopefully that'll be in blue text sooner than later, because I think that's overdue. I mean, we talked about it, man, like before they opened up the sync in 9.1, right? I mean, I was talking on the show about how I would just dump anima into Covenant armor that I would then vendor for 70 gold a piece or whatever, and just go down the list until I was far enough under the anima cap to then deposit the rest of my anima, and I was just sitting there, So now at least we have the sync, but I think removing the cap and making it so you can move anima around would be amazing. We've seen it before with war resources and with order hall resources, garrison resources, just ways to like purchase it at a premium to send to another character, because then you could actually progress an alt pretty easily without having to play the game twice as much, so hopefully that makes it into the official notes very soon. Well,
Yeah.
we actually don't have PTR notes yet. I think we should maybe make that clear as we record this.
This is an update. It's a dev update.
We don't have PTR notes yet, but from what it sounded like, we might see PTR as early as this week. So,
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have more official stuff for you soon.
Yeah. As far as Classic goes, I just wanted to do the quick rundown, which is that the Overlords of Outland update's coming. It's going to have Serpent Shrine Cavern, Tempest Keep as far as raids go. You get your new daily quests kicking in with new reputations, tier 5 class sets, which have some of my favorite tier sets in them. You got Arena Season 2 starting up. You got Guild Banks coming in. You got Group Browser coming in. You got a new Arena Bulletin Board coming in. So a bunch of stuff coming in for Classic. So I'm sure there's people out there who are super pumped about that.
And they pretty much officially, well, how do I say this? They officially teased what we've taken to calling Classic Fresh. And we know that some data hit the PTR about 2 weeks ago that was a build of 1.13 that included support for DirectX 12 and Ray Trace Shadows, which I don't know if you know this, but Vanilla WoW did not include Ray Trace Shadows.
They weren't ahead of their time in that? Oh my goodness.
No, believe it or not, it did not support that feature. So we know they're messing around with stuff. Like, dude, I got to tell you, there's something about the idea of a remixed vanilla server that's really appealing to me. I think some version of like keeping the content the same and some of the systems the same, but remixing the graphics and maybe even like the combat gameplay. Oh man, maybe the leveling path, like make it streamline leveling a bit and just bring in some more dynamic combat. Dude, you might have me on the hook for something like that.
Well, it's I think if they could find a way to keep the look of it still feeling like Classic while making it feel like it's that enhanced thing. I talked about this with the Diablo 2 remake that's coming out, where you have to try and make the game look like the way people remember it, because no one ever remembers something in 600 by 400 resolution ever, right? Or 800 by 600 or anything, right? Or 640 by 480. I know I said the wrong thing. Whatever. No one ever remembers it that way, right?
Sideways, yeah.
I know. Yeah. No one ever remembers it that way. They remember it as this like really cool, amazing looking game. And so when you're doing these remasters, you can't update stuff so much that it goes beyond where people's memories are, so it looks too good and too clean and too new. But you have to hit that nice balance of like, yeah, I do remember stuff looking kind of like this. I do remember stuff feeling kind of like this. And so if they can manage to pull that off, I think it's great.
Just imagine a world where like, okay, you have Warlords of Draenor and Beyond character models. You have like whatever the newest models are for whatever mob types you're fighting, right? So Naga and Gnolls and Murlocs and all that. But you have the original zones as they were designed, original quest path, just the storylines in each of the zones, or maybe modified slightly. Content's all the same, systems are the same, but maybe it plays more like, modern WoW in terms of the combat. Maybe it has more modern VFX or something, just a little bit flashier looking and just more responsive and interactive combat. Like, man, that would be really cool.
Yeah, could be really cool. I'm with you.
Because, this is not replacing Classic. You still have your 1.12 servers on version 1.13. You still have that, very true experience to what Vanilla WoW was, but now you also have this other option. Like, that would be huge, I think.
Well, right now they already have the ability to toggle on and off Classic mode, if you will, right, for graphics and appearance. So if I'm assuming they could include something similar for character models and whatever, if that's what people were looking for. But yeah, I think it'd be neat to be able to do that. All right, well, that's enough top of the show stuff. Let's dive into these patron questions, because we got a list of them here and I want to get through them. I want to be sure we give them the time they need. So this one starts off with Mert Slam, who says, so I won't be there for the call-in, but I had 2 questions for the Q&A for August. What moment in World of Warcraft made you fall in love with the game? And if you were introducing someone to the story to catch their attention, like if you're intentionally trying to catch their attention with the story and get them interested, what would you show them? I personally would show them the Arthas storyline. Okay, so the moment for me that made me fall in love with the game is Teldrassil walking through the forest on my Night Elf Hunter on beta. Like, that was where I was like, yep, this is it. I'm here. I'm going to be playing this game a lot. I was a big Warcraft 3 fan, and the fact that I could choose to play a Night Elf Hunter, which was like great. I could go out and like train a pet, and I had this cool tiger that would follow me around, and I'm riding down a pathway under the umbrellas of trees toward like in Teldrassil with the music pumping and all the sound effects going, and yeah, like it captured me instantly. It was incredible. That moment for me is that's the moment where I was like, this is amazing. And that was in beta. Like that was like like before launch of game. I was like, I'm in. So that was a long time ago for me. Yeah, I'll let you answer that part first, and we'll go to the second part.
I mean, it's a very similar answer. You know, it was really like, I think I've told this story on the show before. It was, you know, playing early retail days, you know, after launch, first week, first couple days, playing a baby Night Elf Warrior. And guess what? Leveling Warrior in 1.x is
oh
a
my
chore.
god, is it ever a chore? Oh.
Yeah. But rounding that bend in the road and seeing Darnassus kind of looming up there and running into like my first actual WoW city back in 2004, man, no other game in the genre had that kind of majesty when you'd approach a capital city. It was really striking. You know, it was really kind of cinematic the way it was framed, the way you kind of come around and it appears there to you, and then you walk through these massive front gates, and then it's like this hub of activity. I remember thinking to myself, like, I couldn't believe how big the game was, that it took me so long just to get to this city. And it's like, that was a small corner of just the stuff that launched with the game, let alone, you know, how far we came throughout vanilla and then all the way up to today. It's quaint to think about it now, but it was, yeah, that was a big moment for me. I think that was what really connected me with the game world the most, was just getting to that point where it's like, yeah, this world feels like it's alive, or at least has the capability to come alive on certain occasions. Yeah, that's where it really clicked for me.
Well, I would also emphasize no load screens was the other thing. You load into the game and you're just like back then, it's 2004, right? Like back then you're playing Half-Life, you're playing whatever other games you're playing. They have all these like big load points that you hit as you travel through levels, right? You're just used to seeing that load screen pop up as you take an elevator, or as you walk through a hallway, or whatever it is, as it loads in all the new content. And you literally load into World of Warcraft in that area, and you can just ride for 20 minutes in one direction and it never loads. Like it's just like you are there. It's the world. Like there was never a, oh, hold up, we gotta like you've now zoned into this other area, let's do this. They basically went, okay, when we have dungeons and when we have travel, like fast travel to other cities, like fast travels and portals, you get a load screen. That's what we're going to do. And outside of that, you are getting on a flight path, and that flight path takes you from A to B, and you don't load. You just fly over everything and watch everything. Like it was amazing as far as experience goes, like the scope of the world.
Oh yeah. And if you read John Statt's book, The Warcraft Diary, or The World of Warcraft Diary, sorry if I'm butchering the title, John, like that was very much intentional. That was like a mission statement from a tech standpoint for designing the game, was no load screens. They wanted the world to be immersive and seamless. And yeah, at the time that was kind of revolutionary, man. Like I think people like to dunk on WoW's engine for being old and busted, but I don't really think that's the case. I think it's sort of a software engineering marvel, and they did stuff with it at the time that nobody else was doing. It's held up remarkably well over the years. I mean, we'll talk about server lag issues and stuff on Tuesday's show. We got some communication from the server team. Like, the bottom line is you have a lot of moving pieces. You have a network, live service game. You're on the internet. Like, there's going to be performance hitches and stuff, but the way the game is built, it has served the needs of game design very well over the last 17 years.
They've also, more credit to that team, have managed to put together a game that you can play on a computer that's like 12 years old or 15 years old still, and run and play on that. It's just remarkable what good the support is when it comes to being able to play on old hardware and actually be able to play the game to a certain,
And that stuff was all
certain degree.
intentional in the late 90s. That was when they started putting the pieces together. That was the intent, was accessibility on lower end machines and stuff. Like all that was all very intentional.
Yeah. All right. Second part of the question. If we're going to introduce someone to the story and we want to catch their attention, what do we show them? And of course, Mertzlam took the easy, great answer of Arthas, because that is just one of the most phenomenal storylines out there, especially if you start with the Warcraft 3 aspect of it and work your way through Lich King. I think that's a really great one. I think I'd go with something like these days. I think I'd go with something a little bit more cute and quaint. I think I would almost find one of the early starting area storylines, because it's almost the simple things that hook you. So, not so much as let's go out and kill 12 boars, but like the farmsteads where they had, someone had a relationship with the other farmstead, and there's like feuding that's happening between the two of them, and that kind of stuff happening, and really exploring how this is a living space, right? It's a game that when you are traveling around in the world, you can come across someone and they can go, you know what, I need your help with this. And what I need help with is these guys over here keep letting their pigs come into our pumpkin field and eating all of our pumpkins. This is ridiculous. I need you to get out there, get these pigs under control so that they stop eating all of our pumpkins. And so you go and you take care of that. And then meanwhile, the guy with the pigs is going, what are you doing killing all my pigs? This is outrageous. I need you to do this thing for me to pay for all the pigs that you've now taken care of. Like it's, I like that the world it has those non-ginormous epic moments too, right? That's what makes it feel alive. As much as there's importance in exploring these really huge storylines, sometimes it's the cutest little quest that takes you 20 minutes to do that can really make you feel like, oh, well, this is like a real world, and this is a person who's having this problem, and I'm able to come along and help them with this, and they're going to give me boots as a reward, and that's kind of cool, I need some boots. I don't have those ones, so
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. Like, I think the quiet moments are some of the places where the world really shines the most. Like, man, I'll tell you what, lately, just running around doing stuff in Shadowlands, like I've been staying on my kind of daily routine for 4 or 5 days a week, clearing out Korthia, making that checklist go away, getting conduit upgrade items. I've had these pangs of like really missing like Mists of Pandaria lately. That's the thing that keeps like attacking my subconscious when I'm playing the game, because that was something that felt really connected to Azeroth, even though it was this corner of it we had never seen before, and it was full of those kind of quiet moments and those exploratory moments. Maybe it's because Korthia has a lot of Timeless Isle DNA, and so it's sort of this callback to that. But yeah, I think those are kind of the little moments where the game really shines. Like if somebody wants to sit down and kind of dink around with the game and check it out, like I think those things are going to pull them in as much as any big story beat. I mean, I have not been super kind to, WoW's ability to tell a narrative story over the years, and I really don't think it's good at it. I do think the Arthas storyline, as introduced in Wrath of the Lich King, is probably the best that they've done it. So I would agree with Mert on that level, that like maybe that would, if you want to hook somebody with the story, like show them that. But like, I don't think that's what WoW's good at. And I think if you want to introduce the concept of Warcraft to somebody via narrative, show them the cutscenes from Warcraft 3, and then let them go run around in a leveling zone or go do Exile's Reach for an hour.
Right.
Because I think, I don't know. I think, just what we were just talking about with sort of what our kind of entry point into the game was, or where the game really clicked with us. And then, the discussion we were having at the top with, a potential classic fresh or like some kind of remixed classic. My favorite elements of the game are really that sort of sandboxy, less guided, more immersive kind of experience, and less the superhero narrative that, they've leaned into more over the last 10 years or so. I think the first 4 or 5 years where it was like, okay, here's the elevator pitch here's the setup. This is why your character cares. Go have fun. I think that just worked better for me than like follow these breadcrumbs and then you get the next little snippet of the story and then do it again and then do it again and then do it again. And then we'll see you in 11 months for the next chapter, right? Like when the next expansion comes out. Like I don't know. I think I personally would prefer it if they would step back from that kind of storytelling and just have like a big setup, set the table with the big bads and let us go fight them and just discover our own little bits of story and tell our own stories within that framework. Like to me, that's more fun.
I do sort of wonder what an expansion would be like if it was not less of an overarching large story and more of a, these are the bad guys that we're going to be fighting. Easy setup up front as to why they're the bad guys and understandable as to why they're the bad guys. But then take all of the time that you put into normally developing those large overarching stories and just pump in way more of those 20 to 30 minute quests that I was talking about, those little experiences that make the world feel alive. So there's just more of them, right? And they don't necessarily need to be a required thing that everyone has to do, but it's something that people can choose to go and do, or you run into out in the world. I would even be fine with them doing what they do with Suramar, where like every 2 weeks, another little like batch of them gets released and they just keep, seasoning the expansion as the expansion cooks to make sure that we always have something that's really fun to dive into throughout it. So
yeah, I think that's what really brings out the texture of the game itself, man. I mean, we've been doing this a long time. I've said it a lot of times on our air and on other people's air that like the world is and should always be the main character of this game, and I think it's what people really respond to when they sit down to play WoW, because it just feels like a space where kind of anything is possible, right? Like you have all these different types of backdrops, you have like deserts and jungles and mountain peaks and river valleys and just all this kind of stuff, all these different types of environments, all these different types of creatures and NPCs to interact with, and different qualities to the gameplay as you go through. Like that, to me, that's the bread and butter. That's the thing that WoW does like really well for the solo player. And I don't think the sit and watch this cutscene is where it lives.
Yeah. All right. Next question comes in from Tetsemi, who says here's the question for the Patron Q&A on Friday. With the changes coming in 9.1.5, so clearly Tetsemi is caught on to the announcement that's happened, which is one of the reasons why we recapped it at the top so that everyone was on the same page. It seems like some of the suggestions/recommendations that were made during beta of Shadowlands are actually now coming into the live game. Why do you think the dev team was so entrenched in their design? And do you think this same decision would have been made had we not been hung in 9.0 for so long? Is there anything the player base / community could do differently in the future to make their points better on these type of design ideas? Because it seems to me this isn't the first time this sort of thing has happened in the past few expansions. Okay, so I mean, right off the bat, I can't speak to the exact mindset / design path planning that the dev team does. I know that the team consists of hundreds of people, and I know that there are a lot of ideas that are put around, and that often those ideas are, if they're good and they want to be included in the expansion, they find ways to sort of shoehorn them or merge them with other ideas to sort of make them fit in, because they want to be sure they get as many good ideas in as they can. I will say that this definitely isn't the first time in the past few expansions that there's been a lot of feedback around particular systems that people were giving devs, where the devs sort of went, we hear you, but we're not changing anything. We're staying on the path that we're doing. As some people like to put it, sort of Apple point of view of, you don't know what you want, we will tell you what you want, sort of perspective on design is what was represented to some of the community, and that's certainly how some people felt about it. That isn't necessarily what Blizzard said, obviously. That is me paraphrasing. But I think that when it came to Shadowlands, there was a certain amount of hurry about getting at a BFA, and that Shadowlands had to be a really big hit. And that messing with the DNA of this expansion, when in beta they'd already sort of committed to certain systems, wasn't something they wanted to do. I think they very much wanted to release this, see reaction based off of the release content to the broad player base, and then have, time to change and fix and iterate. And I don't think they planned on sitting in 9.0 for as long as they did. I don't think they planned on not being able to fix a lot of these things until 9.1.5, based off feedback. I think they probably planned to pivot very quickly on a lot of these topics if they needed to. Things like conduit energy isn't super ridiculously complicated to remove from the game, and it's something that was feedback given on very, very early in production as far as beta goes. But again, you're getting feedback from content creators and the amount of people who are actually playing the game during beta, which they have the numbers on. And they have the numbers of the people who are subscribed, and they have the weekly, activity numbers, and they have all those numbers. And for all we know, it was 8% of the player base that was giving them, that was participating in beta, and it was 2% of that 8% that were giving them feedback they didn't like conduit energy, right? And to us in the community, it seems very loud because it's all of our friends and the people we surround ourselves with and the content creators we listen to who are saying these things. But, they're looking at, however many millions or hundreds of thousands of people who play and log into this game regularly and going, well, you know what? We have this small percentage that are expressing this opinion. And so I can understand them not pivoting during beta as hard on removing conduit energy, changing up the covenant system. Like, I really understand why that pivot didn't happen, because they were really hung up on this needs to be a really meaningful decision. This needs to be a decision that when you choose to pick a covenant, it's like choosing your class for your character. It's that level of decision is what they were going for. And unfortunately, they tied so much character power to the covenants that it created a problem for a lot of players, right? I feel like if the covenant system was put in and the decisions around your covenant and power around your covenant was primarily cosmetic and primarily something of how you approach the storyline, similar to sort of like the Legion class halls, I feel like that would have actually gone over much better for a lot of players. But as soon as they put in covenant abilities and they had conduit systems and they had soul binds and the conduits affected the soul binds and which soul bind you used affected the type of gameplay you were doing and which covenant you chose affected the type of gameplay you were doing, or even how you approached AoE versus single target, that became an issue. And that's where a lot of people started to sort of see the issues brewing. And I think that really is what was the mistake when it came to covenants. But again, they were so far into this design of what the system's going to look like, how they were going to back out of that. I can't picture them even considering going, yep, no, we should be able to swap covenants freely. Like I like that early on in beta and even in launch in 9.0, I can't picture that ever being a thing that they were considering. Simply because it removes the meaningful decision from it entirely. You then have players, which already, FYI, people are complaining about. What is next raid tier going to look like? I'm going to have to hearth between every single boss to change which covenant I am so that I can have the best covenant for the next boss. How's Prog going to look? Because I'm going to have to, basically level up every single covenant to max on all of the characters that I'm planning on raiding on so that I can swap freely between them to be able to min-max for progression on these bosses. I'm already seeing those complaints coming in, which I just sort of roll your eyes at, right? Because you're like, you can't win. Like, you can't win in these situations. They wanted the system to feel meaningful. It did. It also felt punishing, but it was meaningful. And now that they're talking about removing those things in 9.1.5, you have the exact reason why they didn't, one of the exact reasons why they didn't want to make the system really free for people to swap around, suddenly becoming the, big complaint that everyone has, right? It's you can't win in those situations. And I don't blame the dev team for being really entrenched in their design when it comes to 9.0 and committing to covenants and those sorts of things. I do blame the dev team for not being able, not that they didn't, but not being able to pivot as fast as I think they would have liked on a lot of these topics. Whether that was administrative or that was just like technical difficulties or that was the pandemic or that was whatever that was that stopped them from being able to pivot and not doing a 9.0.7 or doing whatever it is patch-wise that they needed to do. I do feel like they need to put something in place to be able to make changes like removing conduit energy a thing faster in the game if they need to when the game goes broad and people are having, well, they see the numbers of people who are complaining about these things skyrocket and who are having issues with these things. Like, to me, I'd just be tracking how often are people changing conduits. Like, they have to be able to track those numbers. And so instantly you go, hey, look, people are changing conduits way too quickly and way too often. So we need to change this. The system isn't working because people clearly want to do it because they're doing it. So we need to actually make this something that people can do. Give the people what they want when it comes to some of these ideas, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think another thing to maybe frame this discussion with is like these feelings in the community around these systems, they didn't start on November 23rd, right? They didn't start when the beta tag came in. They didn't start when alpha opened. They started when the instant that this was announced at BlizzCon 2019, right?
Sure,
like
yeah.
we were in bars and events having conversations with people the night that Shadowlands was announced, and people were complaining about how covenants were going to affect class balance. And it's tough because the developers have to make the game they want to make, right? If the developers can't make the game they want to make, then there's no chance it's going to be fun. That's I truly believe in that. Does this mean the developers are always right? No. Does this mean that the developers are incapable of making mistakes? No. Does it mean we have to just grin and bear it if there's something that we really hate about the game? No. But you can't let a chorus of YouTubers and Twitch streamers and podcasters design your game for you. You have to go to the bench and make the game as cool as you think you can make it and see what happens. I do believe that they do have to take chances. This is a 17-year-old game. They need to swing for the fences, and they need to do different stuff to keep it fresh, to try to surprise us, to try to add interesting wrinkles and friction to the game. The dev team does want to create friction. They do not want a frictionless experience. They want you to have reasons to keep coming back, frankly. They want you to have challenges to overcome. They want you to have things to earn and accomplishments to achieve within the game. I think conduit energy is just an example that I couldn't understand when they brought it in. It wasn't in alpha originally. I think they brought it in during beta, and it was like, why are you guys doing this? It doesn't. That never made any sense to me. And hanging on to it for a year seems strange. I think you can make a case for the conduit thing because we're just talking about story in the last question.
Oh, you mean the covenant thing? You said conduit.
The covenant thing,
yeah,
yes. Right. I think you can make a case for it from a gameplay standpoint for the reason that like the initial part of the story is there's the anima drought. We have to pledge to the covenants, and we have to resolve this issue with the anima drought, and we have to earn the respect of the covenants and all this stuff.
They don't know us. They don't have a reason to trust us yet. This makes sense.
For better or for worse, they do take these types of story elements for an expansion like very seriously in terms of how they play out within the gameplay. So, I think on that level, you can kind of see why they wanted to stick to their guns on it. I do think like if you had covenant switching in place from the jump, where it's just if you started with where we're going, that the system would never have really made any sense to anybody. You'd be constantly kind of chasing your tail because you don't like you have 4 separate covenant stories, right? And you have different systems that go along with them. You have different soul binds. You have different abilities. You have different conduits that modify them. I think you'd be throwing so much at players at once if the game launched in that state. If Shadowlands launched where you could just swap your covenants around at will.
Oh my god, it's so complicated.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you'd get anything out of it, right? Like you'd never experience the game. You'd go look at a guide, and the guide would tell you what to do in what order and like what to switch to for which types of content you were doing, and use this covenant and soulbind for PvP, and use this for Mythic Plus, and use this for raiding, and you just do that, and you'd have no connection to the stuff that they're building into Shadowlands. Now, I don't feel particularly connected to this expansion, and I've complained about that on the show a lot. And I hate to keep hammering on it, but like this expansion is just not my jam. It's just like thematically, it's just I have no connection to this stuff at all. But I do think they've done a good job of establishing the players and setting the table and building this story that kind of, reached another level of intensity in Chains, and with the ending of, the Korthia campaign and the ending of the Sanctum of Domination raid. Like, I think for what it's worth, that stuff has come together pretty well. I think a lot of players would be really disconnected from it if we came in that way. So it feels like this has been I guess my point is, it to some degree it feels like this stuff has been a problem for longer than it actually has. The expansion's only 9 months old as of this week, right? We've just been fighting about this for almost 2 years already, which is maybe that says something about like the way that they run alphas and betas, and maybe we have too much access to this game too early for too long. Is that a possibility? I don't know. That's sort of outside the scope of what Tetsemi's asking here, but I do not believe that there, to his question about, anyway, that's my answer to why I think they were entrenched in their design, right? This is what they believed was the right thing to do for introducing the systems to players, for dovetailing with the story, and also like just time to get data about how people were actually playing it. It's one thing for you to read a blue post or read a Wowhead article and then go on the forums and blast the developers for stuff that you've never even played. That's not really actionable, right? Like that means nothing to anybody except whoever on the community team has to dig through it and decide if they're passing it along to somebody. Even what you say on social media, you tag Warcraft dev, whatever it is that you do, like that, I would imagine that stuff is secondary to the data they have on player interaction and like how players actually spend their time in the game and how engaged they are with certain systems or whatever, as it should be, because I think just flaming a forum post doesn't. I don't think that results in good design. I think listening to feedback is obviously part of it, but also kind of taking stock of what people are actually doing is important. And honestly, man, like to some degree, I want them to stick to their guns up to a point, right? I want them to kind of believe in their design and let it play out. And then if they stumble, admit it like they're doing. And I mean, I think there was some good stuff. We'll probably get into it more on Tuesday's show. In the blue post we got where they said, yeah, we screwed this up. It's not working out the way we intended, and we're changing it as a result. Like, that's what I want. I don't want them to have an idea they think is cool, and then somebody makes a YouTube video with a cringing, thumbnail, and then they change the game design because of that. Like, I don't think that leads us to a good place. I think, as to Tetsemi's point about, is there something we do differently to make better points? No, because you're not going to, I think by and large, we're not going to talk them out of these overarching designs. They're going to make the game that they want to make. And I don't think I can't envision a scenario, right, where like Covenants or Azerite armor or artifact weapons, as they were conceived pre-alpha and then into alpha beta release, where like community feedback would result in massive shifts of those systems before the overarching player bases had a chance to play with them. I just can't imagine it, because these are things that they just kind of hinge these expansions on. So I think they probably don't give themselves the liberty to make sweeping changes like that, and I'm not convinced that they should. But it's it's tricky, because you see these shifts over the life of an expansion, and people are just like, oh, finally, like this is so obvious. And it's like, it's easy to say that, but I don't think that that's necessarily always true. I also think that when you design a game like WoW, I mean, any live service game, you always want to start from a more restrictive type of position for what players can choose or what players' options are, because it's so hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube, right? Like, you can't do it. So if you start and it's too opened up and the system just eats itself, you can't fix that. If the system isn't opened up enough and people are frustrated because they want more flexibility, you can always give them more flexibility at that point. But if you start with the system blown wide open and it sucks as a result, you can't fix it at that point. So, I mean, take it all the way back to like Legion random drop legendaries, right? In the first couple months, like how low those drop rates were tuned.
Yeah.
And that sucked. But if you got all the legendaries in the first 2 weeks of the expansion, it would defeat the purpose of how they built the system. So over time, they loosened up the knob, right? So they dropped more, and they gave you more ways to acquire ones you didn't have. Expansions improve over their life. I don't think there's an expansion you can name that wasn't better at the end of it than it was at the beginning. No expansion starts really good and then gets worse the whole time. Every expansion starts with varying degrees of promise and then improves until it's replaced by the next expansion. So I don't know. That's kind of where I land. I hope that answers Tetsemi's question to some degree. But yeah, I don't know. I think armchair game development is never going to work for WoW, and I don't think it works for any game really. I think it's definitely a good thing to be involved in the feedback loop and to tell the developers what we like and don't like about the game, but expecting them to turn on a dime because of a Reddit post or a YouTube video is ultimately, it may fix a problem here, it may smooth down a pain point here or there, but if they design the whole game that way, I don't think it's anything we'd want to play for any extended period of time.
Yeah, my only thought on that is sort of what I was emphasizing earlier of I just want them to have the ability to pivot sooner if they want to. I dislike all of this is going to happen in 9.1.5, and you're like, well, you could remove Covenant energy now if you could actually do some sort of service patch in between now and then, right? They tend to wait until these large releases to do changes like that to systems, and in some cases, once you've made the decision, which they've clearly already made, I would like it if they were able to get those things into the game sooner. That to me would be a nice thing to be able to do once they've made the decision. I agree that they shouldn't be able to like have a meeting in the morning after a YouTube video came out complaining about a system, and by the end of the day be like, okay, we're implementing this. I'm fine with them taking 2 weeks or 3 weeks to make the decision, figure out what's best, look at the numbers, look at the feedback, talk about different options, brainstorm some other options. Like that to me is fine. But once you've made the decision of this is what we're doing in this patch, why not just do it a little bit sooner when it's something like Conduit Energy? The Covenant thing, if that's going to tie into storyline and renown unlocks and all that stuff, sure, I get that. But Conduit Energy is something you're just removing from the game. It's not tied into anything. That's something you could release sooner. And so I would like it for them to be able to put those things out more dynamically versus, hey, we're just waiting for a large patch to do this.
I mean, I would imagine, I don't know anything about how they developed the game, but like even if you couldn't make it so that like Conduit Energy would disappear from your display, right? Like maybe that requires a client-side patch,
right?
But just hotfix it so you never consume it or something, exactly. And then you can fix the UI in a patch later on. I mean, well, I don't know.
Yeah,
that's a game development question that I am not qualified to speak on.
Fair enough. All right, so yeah, I hope that answers Tetsemi's question. I certainly don't feel like the players need to change the way that they are presenting feedback. I feel like the way the players have been presenting feedback is healthy, and that we don't need to necessarily change a lot of that feedback. I think just continuing to use the proper channels as far as forum posts, posting constructive feedback, and framing it in your experience and how it feels for you is what they're looking for. And if you continue to do that, that's the best we can do. They need to take it from there, and I just hope that their decision-making improves a little bit when it comes to some of these things.
I just want to say, too, like, I think the communication we've seen out of the WoW dev team recently has been really good, much better than what we've grown accustomed to over the last few years, at least, and I don't know. Maybe I'm naive, but I'm optimistic. I think we're moving in a good direction here. I think the changes that they're bringing in the Shadowlands really speak to their willingness to address like player concerns and to just try to make the game more fun. Like straight up, this stuff makes the game more fun, and that's really important because that's what it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah,
it's supposed to be fun. We want it to be fun. Increase the fun quotient, and that means different things for different people in some ways. But I mean, and I've seen a lot of people be snarky about these changes too, and I think that's misguided. If you like WoW, then you probably want WoW to be good, and then you should be happy when they improve it, I think. So I hope that this represents the beginning of a philosophy shift. I feel like we've been fighting against the devs collectively. I don't mean me personally or you and I, And in fact, I don't even have a lot of complaints about the game over the last 5 years. Honestly, like if you listen to this show, it's not like we're railing against the state of the game constantly. I meet it where it is for the most part, but it really feels a lot like, the loudest parts of the community are just waging war against the developers' decisions, just constantly over these last few years. And like, I don't know, maybe this is the beginning of more changes that we'll see, where it's like, okay, we're actually going to get to the root of what gets under people's skin about WoW in 2021,
Right.
and we're gonna guide future design decisions along that route of just like, what is fun, what respects people's time, what feels rewarding, what feels like it's a fun choice to make. Like, I think if they can use those principles to guide design, that we'll have less of these conversations anyway.
Could be. All right, well, we have a caller. We're going to bring in Dresden, because I know Dresden wants to ask some questions. So good day, Dresden. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Welcome back, man.
Yeah, welcome back on the show. We're happy to have you. I hope you've had an okay week. And is there something you wanted to share with us today?
Yeah. So I've kind of been living under a rock ever since the last Q&A.
Okay.
I've just been focused on doing raids, getting my 1 or 2 Mythic Plus done, playing around a little bit with an alter character, just in terms of farming, getting stuff for potions and stuff like that. The very basic necessity. I've really ignored any of the extra news coming in terms of this firing, that firing, any new stuff coming in. So it's something itself, it sounds like from what you were just talking about, is some stuff I'm going to have to catch up on. But I've also been diving into Final Fantasy XIV as well. And it's refreshing to see a different system in terms of what's going on, where you're not just locked in one world. And I'm wondering if you guys are into any other different worlds.
Oh, man. Okay, so I only play one MMO, one world. I only play one MMO, and that's World of Warcraft, and that's simply because I guess I feel like, and I know Jason's expressed this too, I don't know if there's another MMO I would ever dive deep into and commit to, because I feel like for me, the way I play games, it would be a commitment, right? I'd be like, okay, I'm going to play this. I'm going to put at least a few hundred hours into it. I'm going to see the end game, experience the end game, see what it's like, and see if that's something that I want to really continue to invest a lot into. But I would feel like I'm investing a lot into it, and so I just don't know if I have it in me to take on another world like that down the line with whatever happens to World of Warcraft, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. When it comes to other worlds in general, though, there's a lot that I dive into. To me, one of my favorite games of all time is actually Frostpunk, which is a survival-based strategy game. And
I've played it. It's pretty awesome.
It's phenomenal. It's a phenomenally well-designed game with an amazing world. Where, I mean, the conceptual, for people who don't know, is that there's another ice age coming, and basically the world has decided that it's going to go to these particular points on the planet and build these things called generators, which are just going to be giant heating towers. And you can build housing around those heating towers to try and survive the ice age storm coming in, and then try and rebuild afterwards. And the entire architecture and structure and build of it is circular, meaning that the center of your whatever area you're building in is the generator, and it's circular, and you literally build in circles out from that and rings out from that whenever you're building things. And so it's this really beautiful looking architecture that they've done, and it's a challenging survival game. So to me, that's definitely one of the worlds I love getting into and I love exploring. And I play all the time. I go back and replay the campaigns. I play them on the hardest difficulty. They have a sandbox mode where you can just play forever if you want, with occasional storms or without storms, or whatever challenge you want to put on you there. But they also have the storyline campaign. The storyline's interesting. They released an expansion a little while ago that covers essentially the very first generator being built and sort of what that experience was like, where this impending storm, where they're not sure how bad it's going to be, is coming, right up to, you know, the future stuff that they sort of gotten into, where now we've come out of that storm, and what does it look like as far as like trying to contact other settlements, other generators, and form up alliances, and trying to, you know, build up supply routes where you're trying to make sure that if you don't have enough, you know, lumber in your area, you can be trading coal or food or something for lumber, and working on trade routes between places. Like it's very in depth. And there's a second game coming out, and we don't know when, but they just announced Frostpunk 2, and it's going to central around oil, and oil as a resource, and what that sort of is doing to society as they try and advance farther technologically. So it's cool. I dig that universe. It's definitely one of my favorite ones of all time, and so that is a world that I dive into, and I love. Outside of that, I play a lot of Dead by Daylight, which I've mentioned a few times on the show, which is just four people against monster kind of game. All the characters are played by people, so the monster is a person who is going around trying to kill all the people, and the four people are trying to repair generators which power gates that allow them to escape from the area that the monster is in. They can't do anything to actually hurt the monster or kill the monster. They are just attempting to be stealthy and attempting to sort of escape from the space and escape these interactions with this monster. And the monsters all have different powers and abilities they can use, and the people can have their own little, you know, sneaky tricks that they can have, and their own perks that they can have. And there's this really large back end system of talents and whatnot that you can use. So I play a lot of that. I think I have like 700 hours in Dead by Daylight. So I've played a lot of that game. I enjoy it a lot. So that's another world that I dive into. That's just sort of that's a for fun, let's kick around a little bit less. There's still story and lore, and they add all that in as far as history on characters. I don't get as involved in that. I just enjoy the gameplay. Yeah, I think those are two standouts for me. Games I'm playing at the moment, if I just wanted to mention them, is the new Alien Retaliation sort of game that came out. It's basically Left 4 Dead, if you guys ever played those games. It's you and two buddies are part of a Marine squad going up against aliens, doing missions in aliens where waves upon waves of aliens come at you, and you're just trying to kill them all. It can be first person, so it can be, it's only third person is what I meant to say. And you're, you got like four or five different classes you can play, and you can customize weapons and all sorts of stuff. But it's got the music from the original movies. It's got the sound effects for the pulse rifles and whatnot from the original movies. It's real nostalgia trip if that's your kind of thing. So I've been playing that. That was fun. I tried the Icarus beta last night, playing with some of the guys, and that was fun. So we dove into that a little bit. That's like a modern space version of Minecraft, with some better graphics and whatnot. That was kind of fun to kick around in. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been up to lately as far as worlds go. How about you, Jason?
Well, you know, I really have no appetite for MMORPGs outside of WoW. Like,
No.
I will probably never play another one unless maybe they like shutter WoW entirely and then release like a WoW 2 or something someday. Like, I guess I would check that out. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really like MMORPGs, which is maybe a hilarious thing for me to say into a microphone, but it's the truth. I mean, I played a lot of the genre up until WoW came out, and I never really liked any of it. And there's something about WoW that just I enjoy from the Warcraft 3 days. It's really what it's about for me, I think, is just continuing that story in that world. And the amount of time I've sunk into WoW is just unimaginable for me to replicate on any level.
Right.
And I have no interest thematically or aesthetically in the other choices on the market right now. I mean, you know, maybe if something, you know, I'm not saying nobody could do it for me. Nobody could crack it for me in the way that WoW did, but nothing on the market makes me go, oh, you know, I should check that out when, you know, if I'm not playing a lot of WoW. I do really like Destiny. I mean, I've been into Destiny from the beginning, although I haven't spent much time lately. I didn't play the previous season at all, actually, just because I've been busy with other stuff. You know, Destiny is like an MMO light. It's not an MMORPG. It's an FPS. It has RPG elements. It has MMO elements, but it's sort of this like, it's this FPS gameplay, but it has a lot. It sort of occupies this middle space between WoW and Diablo, but then you play it like an FPS. Well, I really like the fiction there. I think the setting's really strong. I think the art direction is incredibly strong, and art direction really is what speaks to me the most about stuff that I want to play. If I like the way a game looks, if I find the setting and the aesthetics interesting or charming, then I'm in. And if I don't, then I'm never getting in. And Destiny has this weird, like, it's not your typical kind of aesthetic, I don't think, in the video games market. It's very influenced by like 70s French sci-fi, like heavy metal and stuff like that, and it stands out to me a lot. I think it's really a beautiful game in some contexts. The skyboxes are just picturesque, and it's super fun to play. It's just not a thing I've had a lot of time for. My other love outside of WoW, especially like of late, is just Pokemon, and I spend a lot of time playing the old Pokemon RPGs. I earlier this year I started up a new Red save, and I got a 151 Pokédex in Red for Virtual Console of my 2DS. I then maxed out the Pokédex at 251 in Gold, Silver, Crystal on the Virtual Console releases. I have logged hundreds of hours in Pokemon RPGs just since like springtime. It's just a super fun and chill game to me. I can play it at my own pace. There's a couple different things you could focus on, right? You can focus on the collection aspect. You could focus on items and getting all the different items and powering up. You could focus on all the battles. You can just kind of hang out, and there's like little mini games in most of them and stuff. And like stuff like Pokemon and Animal Crossing actually were sort of the precursors to what I liked about WoW. And WoW certainly in the early days took inspiration from Animal Crossing and included like some of the elements that made Animal Crossing tick. And those were games that were really in the pre-WoW days. Those were games that I played a lot of, like Pokemon Gold, Silver, Crystal, and Animal Crossing for GameCube. So just kind of chill games, like play at your own pace, and I think WoW does have a lot of those elements still, and then also this wrapper of like very high-end competitive and cooperative content. So I think you can actually draw a straight line in some ways from Pokemon RPGs, or really any like video game RPGs, CRPGs, or JRPGs, and stuff like Animal Crossing, like life sims, like straight into almost everything in WoW that isn't like a raid or a battleground. To me, there's a clear through line there.
Yeah, the only other world I wanted to mention, because I thought of this while Jason was talking, was the Fallout universe. To me, is just, I love that universe. It's phenomenal. I grew up playing the original Fallout game, and then going to Fallout 2. And then, obviously they did a lot of iterations with like Fallout Tactics and other things like that came out. I enjoy that turn-based RPG style gameplay a lot. Like XCOM is another one of the ones I just love as far as the world goes, and the setting goes. But Fallout's like big time passion. And the original Fallout guys went on and made a game called Wasteland. Well, not all of the original guys, but some of them went on to make a game called Wasteland, which continues in a similar universe as Fallout, and has some crossover, which is great. And so those would be other ones I'd recommend. That the world is fantastic. The music in the Wasteland 3 game that just came out maybe about a year ago is phenomenal. It has some amazing music in it. So I loved that. And there's a Western version of Everybody Wang Chung Tonight, which I thought was just like the cover was great. Like I was thrilled to find that. Like good on them for still being creative and still making a game that someone like myself would enjoy, that fits in that universe. And yeah, that Fallout, that would be one of those cases where if they actually made a good version of a Fallout MMO or something along those lines, I could see being really interested in something like that. But the scale of that project would be insanely massive. And the project they've done so far, with I think it's Fallout 76 and some of those other versions, they pale in comparison to what I want. And I don't want anything based off of Vegas Engine. Like it's just not. I'm not interested in that. I want something that's probably closer to a World of Warcraft style game in the Fallout universe, except with many more factions and many more places you could pledge yourself to after coming out of the vault. and having a little bit more, world PvP style permanency to that. So I think that could be something that would really pique my interest if they ever dabbled down that line. But that's probably it, man. I don't think there's a lot out there that's going to grab me when it comes to MMO stuff.
Okay. For me itself, the only big problem I've had with Final Fantasy XIV is getting the game started. The bridge between their website and the game is brutal beyond belief. Other than that, the game itself is pretty decent in terms of my own experiences and stuff like that. They have a free version you can play that doesn't include the latest expansion. Does have a couple restrictions, but I mean, I've bought the whole thing just because the storyline is really good. That's what I like about different games. But for something itself more specific, is Mythic Plus or a high-end raid the only way to get a weapon that's above 220?
Oh, I mean, in World of Warcraft, is that the only way to get a weapon that's above 220?
Yeah.
Okay, a weapon that's above 220. I mean,
well, it depends on how much time you want to invest, right? Because
that's true. You could upgrade it with
you can get up to
Korthia.
233, but
Yeah.
you got to get. You can't do that right now. You have to get Archivist tier 6 first, and then you have to get the like Renown 70 or something, which is what, a couple weeks away now.
Yeah.
There's like this weird tiered thing where like you can't get the max level weapon upgrade until you have a rep threshold with Archivist and you have a Renown threshold. But yeah, then the stuff that you get from quests or from drops in Korthia goes up to 233, I believe, which is that half step between normal and heroic sanctum, which is pretty good. It's just you got to wait a while and you got to do a lot of work to get there.
Yeah.
And that's getting through tier 5 for the research, right?
No, that's tier 6. I think at tier 5 it's 226 you can go up to, which is equivalent to normal raid.
Oh, so they do drops for 233 then?
No, so basically you get a weapon off of doing a world quest or off of a mob drop or off of a creation item. Those adamant sort of things that you can right click on to create a piece of gear for your class. Those things can become weapons, and you can upgrade those using research to higher levels. And so I think right now you can get it to 226, I think is where it goes up to right now. And then, as Jason mentioned, eventually you'll be able to push those to 233. And that's just through having the Archivist Codex. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. No, I'm good otherwise. It's just, certain days are going to certain stuff now instead of just World of Warcraft. So, yeah, it's different.
Yeah, I mean, the other way, I guess, that you didn't mention there is PvP would be the other way to get a weapon that high, is if you got into PvP and started doing that, you'd be able to get a weapon that was pretty high up there as far as item level stuff goes.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Of course. You have yourself a good night. Thank you very much.
Thanks for checking in, man.
Ciao.
Thanks for the support.
Yeah. All right. We are going to dive back into our questions. This one comes in from Arajian. I don't think we answered this one yet, which is good. My answer for what would we like to see in 9.1.5 is customization options for Boom Chicken so we don't all look the same. I hear you. I definitely hear you. That is a very interesting thing when they did the Legion skins for Mage Tower and Legion skins for all the achievement unlocks and things like that. They did a bunch of ones for Cat and Bear, and they even did a bunch of different travel forms and all that. And they're still doing more travel forms, but we have yet to see a different sort of skin for the Owlkins, and what that Boomkin form needs to be changed to. So I'm with you. I would like to see them invest some time in doing some customization for that. Right now, you basically have whatever your racial transformation looks like. Like obviously like the bald eagle that they have for High Mountain is sort of like unique to them, that sort of concept. Or the glyph you can apply, which makes you sort of a sparkly remainder of whatever class you're playing. So for me, it's a night elf. I'm a sparkly night elf as opposed to being an owlkin. And that's really sort of the extent of your options. when it comes to that transformation. So I would love to see, like the Neon Bear kind of version of an Owlkin. I think it'd be really cool. They could do some really neat stuff with like having lunar or solar empowered ones. When it comes to like whether you're a flaming boomkin or you're a, like those things would be cool. They could certainly invest some time into it. I'm sure there's people over at Blizzard who would love to do that. So yeah, I'm with you. I like that. That is a good answer. That is something I would most certainly appreciate. And then he says, my question for you guys is, I think all the announced changes for 9.1.5 are great, especially doing away with conduit energy and making covenant swapping easy. Do you think these changes are related to the sexual harassment lawsuit? Perhaps the people who were toxic to their coworkers also designed the toxic game systems? Or maybe it's simply a desperate attempt to entice players back after the mass exodus of players caused by the lawsuit. I would like to think, this is just my opinion, that these are things that, as we discussed earlier when answering Tetsemi's question, that were in the works for a while, and they were just trying to figure out the exact way they wanted to implement them, what that implementation would look like, and just basically whether or not it would fit into 9.1 or 9.1.5 or where that would land. I don't feel like this necessarily has anything to do with the people who designed those systems were people who were keeping them in place or whatever it was were part of the sexual harassment issue, and now that they're gone, they're able to get rid of the negative systems. I think that is very tinfoil hat when it comes to deciding what Blizzard does design wise. I don't think that played a factor. I would really hope it didn't, because I would think the people at the top, when it came to like Ian and whatnot, would have certainly pushed out those sorts of behaviors when it came, at least I'd hope, when it came to choosing to keep systems in the game that hurt the game. But then again, you don't know. So that's what I would like to think. When it comes to is it a desire to entice players back? Of course it is. Of course it's I mean, they make improvements to the game to make people enjoy playing the game more, right? So when they change things like this about the game, they are definitely hoping that this is something that will make players look forward to playing the next wave of content. They want to be sure that players who play the game are having fun. And if players aren't having fun with these systems and they're choosing to make the adjustments, then they are certainly hoping that people who play the game will have fun again. And if players see this and want to come back because of it, I think that's fantastic. So yes, that's where I stand on that one. Jason, how about you with these questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line is that any change they make should entice players back. That should be the goal of design and changes in general. I'm not going to frame it as desperate. I mean, I think they're changing stuff they feel like needs to be changed. I am not cynical enough to believe that this has anything to do with the lawsuit necessarily, at least not directly. I mean, this stuff came to light about a month ago. I would have to think that a lot of this stuff was being hashed out in meetings, and the mechanics of bringing this stuff into the game were probably discussed well before then. So I don't think this is the kind of thing that is just gonna, they're not gonna hit the forums with this in a month flat. And I'm sure that the lawsuit and the dismissal of certain personnel from the company has emboldened the design team and probably united them. And if you read on Twitter what some people who work on different parts of the team have had to say, and especially as a result of Friday's blog post coming out, it certainly sounds that way. It sounds like they're committed to improving the game and working as a team to make the game the best that it can be, and that they're also committed to creating an environment where they can work together and optimize the work that they're doing and back each other up. So, I mean, that might be a side effect of the lawsuit and the publicity and all of that. I mean, nothing has changed at ABK as a result of the lawsuit? Really? Like, Brack was a sacrificial lamb, right? And the management has not done anything the employees have asked for yet. And lawsuit or no lawsuit, the employees who were being harassed, abused, they knew that was happening, whether or not the lawsuit was public. Obviously, a very effective abuse tactic is for people to isolate their victims. So there may have been a lot of people on the team that weren't aware of what was happening or weren't aware of the extent of it. But either way, it's it's not like this was breaking news to a lot of people that are directly making this game that we play, right? Like, the employees that make the employees that are most involved in making the stuff that we play are the plaintiffs that the state is representing in this lawsuit. I think it's very important to try to keep that in mind as we have these discussions, because I mean, we saw a post from the Overwatch team this week that some people had very strange reactions to, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If your point of view is that we need to protect the people that make the stuff that we like, some of the stuff that I saw in response to that Overwatch post was unthinkable to me. But that's kind of a tangent. Yeah, I don't know. I think that Team 2 is doing its job here, and I'm seeing really positive vibes from Team 2 on like Twitter, for example, where I follow a few people who work on the game, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, Blizzard, the employees, the developers, Team 2, they want to attract people to the game, and they want the game to be fun. They want it to be worth your $15. I'm not going to inject any kind of cynicism or snark into that. And from day one, my firm belief has been that I hope that the lawsuit improves working conditions for the people who make these games that I care deeply about.
Yeah, I would also just highlight a few things that you talked about there that I think were really important. And one of them is, that we just want the environment that the devs are working in to be better. But something that happens when there's this much spotlight on a company, when a company like Blizzard has this much attention, is that employees do, I would hope, get the opportunity to push a little bit more for design that would improve the game experience. If there's an idea that's sort of been shelved for a while of, hey, you know what, we should really remove conduit, I know we should really, that's sort of just been put aside of someone saying that for a while. And now people sort of took 2 weeks as a team. They came together better as a team. They listened to each other a lot more as a team. That point might have gotten pushed through harder as a result of this. And so like that, there is the potential that could have happened. That Team 2 found their collective voice a little better. And so when they're speaking about how they want to change aspects of the game, that these things are changing, not necessarily as a result of that, but are happening faster or smoother or in a different way because of what they've sort of come together to decide to do. I would also say that they as a team in whole and have been through a lot, I'm hoping are in a space where the ideas that are being shared have a different process of being considered. That they're changing, or at least in that 2 weeks, they changed how they listen to their employees, and what happens to those ideas that don't necessarily make it into the game, whether they're stored away or they're carried to another package or they're embraced a little bit more, so that creativity isn't lost somewhere. I think that would be nice to see. We were watching Hearthstone. There's Hearthstone tournament stuff happening for Masters Tour right now. And Rob and I were watching it, and I was talking about a game design thing for Hearthstone that I think would be really cool as a mechanic, because we were watching Garrote Rogue, and there's bleeds that go into the person's deck as cards. And I was like, actually, a bleed mechanic would be kind of cool for the game where certain, creatures apply bleeds, and those bleeds stack, and then over turns, it'll do a certain amount of damage regardless. You could have cheaper cards that do AoE because they might not do a lot of initial damage, but that the damage stacks over time. So it might do 4 damage to all the things on the board over 2 turns kind of idea versus doing over 1. And that might just be a really neat mechanic, right? And it's ideas like that I would sort of hope were, that might not necessarily make it into this expansion or next expansion or whatever they're trying to do, but that napkin idea ends up in a file somewhere for when they're like, hey, we're just trying to come up with something creative. They can actually go through it and be like, hey, this was an idea that happened a while ago. I would hope that's happening more than it was happening before, where those sorts of brainstorming and creative idea sessions are being set aside. So, yeah, I'm hoping the team's doing better as a result when it comes down to it. And
yeah, I mean, it's the every voice matters thing, right?
Yeah.
It's on the damn orc statue, and we know
Yeah.
for sure that hasn't been the case, and that's not the company culture, on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a definite possibility that the fallout from the lawsuit may have positive impacts on team bonding and having more communication between elements of the team. I mean, there's a lot of different disciplines that make up the WoW team, and yeah, maybe that is also contributing to. I mean, like, if you read between the lines what some WoW developers have posted on Twitter, it's like obvious that they wanted these changes in the game for a long time, and they weren't winning the argument.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know. Have you ever had an argument at work where you wanted to do something and somebody else wanted to do something else and it just didn't work out for you for a long time, but then maybe in the end you got your way and it was right all along? Like, I have had that experience at every job I've ever worked at, and it just is the way it is. That's the state of any kind of collaborative project, I think. And I don't know, man. I'm not in a headspace where I am interested in feeling bad or cynical about any of the stuff that we heard yesterday. I want a bright future for the game. I want Team 2 to be a well-oiled machine and to make the game fun. So
yeah,
that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I certainly don't have any cynicism about it. I'm certainly happy with all the changes that are coming. I do respect the people who are saying, I wish this could happen sooner. I respect that. That's a legitimate piece of feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. All right, next question.
I mean, from day one, the game has always taken too long to update. It's always taken too long.
We've said it numerous times. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just it's just part of the deal, man. It maybe because it's part of QA and localization and all the stuff that needs to happen before they can ship a change. And maybe it's because internal debate holds things up longer than is ideal for players. A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, but it's nothing new in World of Warcraft.
Yeah. All right, our next question comes in from Adam and WoW. It says, what I am missing on the list of things for the 9.1.5 is account-wide anima. Well, guess what? You should be excited, because that was something that is potentially on their list of things to do. So I'm hoping.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about it, and normally stuff that they tell us that they're talking about results in changes
of some kind. Yes.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. I mean, nothing specific, nothing official, but it's something that maybe we know that it's in the ether, right? It could be on the menu sooner than later.
Yeah. Typically when we hear something like that, it means it's coming. We just don't know what form it's going to come in, whether it's we're going to buy up bags with anima and at a reduced conversion rate, mail them to our alts, or it's going to be account wide, or it's going to be like, we have no idea what it's going to look like.
Right. It's possible it might not even make 9.1.5, honestly.
Yeah,
but
we have no idea.
We know it's on the radar. That's
the important part.
We know that much.
Yeah. So he goes on to say, I am drowning in anima on my main and spent like 25k a week on bags you can just buy in Oribos. I usually buy the ones with the hides. Meanwhile, a lot of my alts are still anima starved, and I don't collect the around 3k anima you get in Korthia from the grinds/rep. Some system like the war resources in BFA or Soul Ash now would be great for me. So yeah, so I'm hopeful that this is going to be good news for you. I'm hopeful that that the system you're looking for is what gets implemented, and you're able to start enjoying that more. I know I'm capped on anima on my main. I have to continuously go and buy bags too. I have nothing else to spend it on. I'm sending mission table stuff regularly. It's one of those things where I'm like, do I start saving up tokens and like just filling up bank space so that when I switch covenants, I can just take all this anima with me, or what do I do? Right. That's sort of where I'm at. So I feel you. I get you. Definitely.
Oh yeah. I have the same pain. And I think Adam has some great suggestions here. I think this is what we need, because they're going to keep ramping up the anima we get, presumably, right? Like we get so much more anima in Korthia than we were getting in 9.0.
Yeah.
And there's not really substantive new stuff to spend it on. There's not a lot. There's a couple new things here and there, which some of it you can't even access yet.
Yeah.
So we're not going to get any less anima going forward, I would imagine, or at least the sources of anima that exist will continue to exist, if nothing else.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is a great thing for them to look at, and these types of quality of life changes, improvements, upgrades. These are always the kind of things that are perfect for a .5 patch because they're not content, right? It's not new stuff to go do. It's not new geometry in the game, right? But it's a thing that improves your daily experience with the game, your weekly experience with the game. It opens up different avenues of play. That's the kind of stuff I'd love to see in a .5 patch, and I wish that we got .5 patches on a more consistent basis within a 3-ish month time frame from a big patch.
Yeah, I mentioned on our last episode that .5 patches are always my favorite patches. They have always had the best quality of life. It just feels better to play the game. Changes, right? I'm good waiting on content. I'm good waiting on raid stuff as long as the game is fun to play. And the .5 patches, in my opinion, are what make the game fun to play. So I'm always happy to see .5 patches coming up. All right, next question comes in from Xander, who says, "You guys talked about upgrading conduits on the latest TSZ. It is going to be a while for me. I just got to rank 5 on Monday, and I have literally not missed a day. I was exalted with Death's Advance like 2 weeks ago. The grind for research is just way too long for my taste. Anyway, my question for you is, back in Season 1, we used to have to buy the conduit upgrade item and then go to the Sanctum and use it. Then you come back to Venari and buy another one and keep repeating the process. Can you buy a bunch of them and go back to your Sanctum and use them one after another?" Yes, you can. That is something you can do. The current ones that exist, you can buy a stack of 10 or whatever it is, like a bunch of them, and I think I bought 12 when I bought mine initially, and take them all back to your Sanctum and spend them all. And just remember, you want to be in the spec, not just loot spec, but be in the spec that you want to be in to actually be able to learn the conduits for that particular spec. And as far as your first note about upgrading conduits and trying to get them in the grind, it's a ridiculous grind. That grind to me, I still that research grind for the reputation for Archivist Codex is brutal. And I know I mentioned it, I think 4 or 5 weeks ago to Robin. I was just saying, like, I have no idea how they expect a player who just logs in and does the daily quests to actually hit rank 6 at any kind of reasonable pace in this expansion, if they hit it in this expansion, because the majority of the reputation you get for this is from doing the Shadow Realm and killing off all of the rares and looting all of the treasures. And like, if you aren't doing those things on a regular basis, this grind takes like 6 months, 7 months to finish. If you're just logging in and going, I'm going to do the pop-up blue question mark, so blue exclamation point daily quests, there are days you get no rep, because you only get rep if you get the items as a reward that turn in for rep. And there's a chance that when you're out doing those quests, you don't loot anything but like a few of those tiny little green runes that are worth 1. So, which aren't actually even worth 1. They're worth half of 1, because each one of those is worth half a reputation point, which is ridiculous. So yeah, it's silly. It's a silly system. I definitely think they need to improve upon the system in a big way when it comes to that grind and lighten the grind, whether it's making everything just be worth more reputation, which I don't think is the solution. I think the solution is reducing the caps on the reputation to make it easier to achieve the top end. I'm doing both would be great, but the fact that I guess it's increase the drop rate on them, increase the value of them, and reduce the cap on the reputation would be the 3 things that I'd want to see to make this work better. Because otherwise, you're still going to have people who take the same amount of time to grind it out because they're only doing the daily quests, and you only get reputation sometimes from the daily quests.
I would say, I think a simple thing you could do to improve the grind would be move all the character power stuff to tier 5.
Oh, 100%.
Just shift it all back. Tier 5 is doable. It's still a process. You still got to earn it, but it's really that 16K up to tier 6 that's the killer.
Yeah.
The weird part of the system is you get so much research that you can't use. There's nothing to spend it on, and you're just banking 55,000 research for weeks until you can finally spend it all at once. Yeah. It's just very strange. You should hit the thresholds quicker so that you can, move through your stash of research more, because it's not fun to collect a bunch of stuff you can't spend. It's fun to collect something and buy a thing and then collect more stuff and then buy another thing. So you could stash like the mounts and the cosmetics and stuff at tier 6. And if you're, if you want to go get it, but you're not missing the conduit upgrades and the Korthia gear upgrades, without, you don't have to do all that to get to that point. I think that would be a big plus. And you could mess with the yield. What would be nice is if at least like one quest every day gave one of the 150s or something. The purple items.
It should give you 2 of those items.
I mean, because when you have a day where you get nothing but anima from the quest, like you get a couple Korthite. Okay, Korthite may or may not be interesting to you. It may or may not have resale value on your server. That's okay. And then like a bunch of anima items is just not, especially without account-wide anima options, and without like we have an anima sync, but it's not like a really impactful or engaging one, right? It's not like Blood of Sargeras was by the end of Legion, where you had this vendor that you could turn Blood of Sargeras into anything by the end of Legion, basically. This is not that. You have 3 options, and one of them is colossally expensive, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think I would like to see tweaks to the 9.1 economy when it comes to this stuff in 9.1.5. It's not where it needs to be long term. I think it's almost kind of okay the way it is, because it is the long tail grind. It is kind of the prestige reward. Like, look at me, I have all 252 conduits. That means that you put the work in, and that you got to the top of that system. It's just a bit unfriendly, like, especially without guaranteed sources on a daily basis, where it's like the quest may not be you can't quest your way up to it. You have to go hang out in Korthia. You have to go, if you really want to be serious about it, you have to go get Handy Notes and Rare Scanner, and you got to clear that map out every day, and there's no substitute for it, right? There's no way to catch it up. Your callings for research aren't backing up every 3 days. You got to go spend the time and pick everything up, or you don't get the reward. So I think it's okay to have stuff like that in the game, but I do think the bar is probably too high for where most of the current audience for the game resides.
Yeah, I agree. I think the bar's too high. I think moving, as you sort of talked about, moving rewards around would also help. If they put the conduit upgrade at 4, they put sockets at 5, and then just cosmetics for 6, that would have also felt better as a system, because it means people would have actually been buying conduit upgrades for a little while now. With the conduit change now, it would also be a really easy way to get, an alternate character feeling really powerful, because you don't have to get to 4, and then you're just farming to actually, get their actual conduits up. So I think all of that is good feedback. So I'm on board with all that. All right, folks, that's going to wrap up episode 473 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. Don't forget, I'll have the link to Epic's Memoriam up on that show notes as well. So you can find that if that's something you want to check out, and maybe just read the fun stories that people have. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter. And if you want to check out the show live, you can find us Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/thestartingzone. That's the new place where you find the show. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald. Always talking whatever I'm doing in and around WoW and other games and other stuff. So come say hi.
Yeah. If you're trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey or over on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening and jobs done. Hi everyone, I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today, I'm going to give a special shout out to A Cookie, Arajian, Bubdoos, Bob, Celian, Claiborne, Deacon, Jeff, Caleb, Kapawi, Matt, Nibble the Mighty, Shorel, Trestle, Trey, and Xerxes. Thank you. This sounder is for you.